Hey guys, my name is Eric and I'm a finance manager at a major tech company, and welcome to the Personal Finance Diaries. Here we talk real money, saving, debt, and smarter financial decisions. Today's topic is picking your first credit card, and here are my stats. I have a lot of credit cards. I've been collecting credit cards for a while now, since I think my first credit card was when I was like 14. I love credit card churning is what it's called. So always trying to get the best deal, getting the best welcome offers, and then being able to travel for free. It is such a cool part of owning a credit card. And so I'm super excited to dive into how you should get your first credit card, what the process looks like, and then eventually how to get to a point where you can use it to your advantage to be able to travel for free and get a bunch of free perks. In a world where we're full of different options, it can be very overwhelming. I know when I was first looking for credit cards, I didn't even know where to start. There were so many options out there. I was getting ads from different companies, different banks, and I can definitely feel your pain through starting out this process for the first time. Before I even start, I want to kind of break down the most important thing when getting a credit card, and that's your credit score. If this is your first credit card, you're going to have to focus on certain cards that you probably won't be seeing ads about, right? You might be seeing Amex, you might be seeing there's American Express, you might be seeing cards from Chase. All those cards are technically out of reach until you've built some kind of credit score to show banks that you're a reliable payer and that you have built some kind of history paying off those credit card bills. So when you're starting out, there's really 4 options of different credit cards that you could get when you're starting to build out your credit and this is your first card. For me, I actually used an authorized user card, which basically means you have an extension of your parents' card. So let's say your parents have a American Express, they can actually ask for an extension, which is like another card in your name that you can start to use to actually help build a little bit of your credit history. Now, the one thing here is that it's tied to your parents. So if your parents don't pay off the bill, then you will be penalized for that. So that's why it's super important that your parents, in this case, are paying off their bill, they have a good credit score, and that way you actually get a benefit from having a credit card under their name. The other 3 are unsecured starter cards, student credit cards, and secured credit cards. I'm gonna break down those 3 in detail now. Starting with a secured credit card, this is probably your best bet when you're first starting out. And simply what it is you actually pay a deposit to the bank and that becomes your credit limit. So on average, typically when you go and apply for a normal credit card, the bank looks at your credit score, they look at your credit history, and they assign a specific credit limit or spending limit on that card based on also your income and things like that. And so, for example, you'll have a limit of, call it $5,000. And so that means you can't spend more than $5,000 on that card at a time. A secured credit card, what it means is you're gonna go to the bank and you're gonna give them a deposit. Let's say that you spend on average, if you're a student or you're young, you most likely are not gonna spend that much per month. So maybe you'll spend $500. Well, what you'd need to do is save up $500 cash, you would turn it in as a deposit, and then they would hold that money until you close the credit card. And so that becomes your limit, $500. That's how much you can spend on the card. And therefore you can start to build your credit on that, and you are more likely to be accepted. It's very easy to get accepted because you're pretty much giving the money up front. Okay, so here I'm showing you one of the most popular secured credit card, and that is a Discover It Cashback credit card. Okay, so I actually had to go to a different page, but here you can see this is the Discover It secured credit card, and you can actually see it. It asks if you're pre-approved, and this is a best way, or one of the most popular cards to actually start to build your credit, and it's by Discover. If I go back, you can kind of see they have a bunch of other credit cards. They have the student cashback credit card, and that's the one I'm gonna describe next. Okay, so a student credit card is basically a perfect card if you're enrolled in a school, right? So the requirement for this is you technically need to be under 21, and if you're under 21, sorry, you have to show that you're getting money from some kind of source. So you need like a co-signer, most likely your parents, or you need to show that you're actually making money yourself if you're under 21, and you need to be enrolled in a school. And so you'd have to show proof that you are enrolled in a school. And so the benefit of this is you don't have to put any money up front, and you can get really cool things. Like, for example, this one shows You can earn 5% cash back on everyday purchases. I mean, that is really, really good. Think about it. Every single time you go and you buy, I don't know, a burger from McDonald's, you're gonna get 5% cash back on that. That really starts to add up. And in a course of a year, you could be making a lot of money. Let me kind of break it down in Excel here and I'll clear this. So let's assume that you spend on average, let's just say $500 a month, right? If you spend $500 a month and you are gonna grab that and you're gonna multiply it by 12, that means you're spending about $6,000 a year. Now, if you just grab 5% of that, right, you're looking at about $300 a year. So that's an extra $300 a year, almost as much as 1 month's extra pay, right? Or a 1 month's extra set of expenses or spending just by using this credit card. That's why I never encourage people to use a debit card. A debit card is the worst thing you could do when you could actually just use a credit card and earn these free benefits like 5%, getting $300 free every single year. And like, let me just show you the power of this. Let's say that you use this card for 10 years, right? At 10 years, and this should not be in percent, at 10 years, you're looking at about $60,000 spent. Now let's just do the exact same calculation over here. We're talking about $3,000. I mean, that goes a super long way. That can help you buy a lot of different things. And all it means, like all you had to do was swipe your card and swipe a credit card instead of a debit card. Highly, highly encourage you look into a student credit card if you are a student. Otherwise, and also you'll be more likely to actually get approved because that people know, like these banks know that you're a student, you probably aren't making that much money and you are more likely and you don't have as much credit. And so all those different things and different factors make it maybe like a lower barrier to entry to actually get the credit card. I personally got a student credit card when I think I was 17 or 18 or something like that. I was going to college and I was able to get a student credit card and I was able to get approved pretty easily. So I highly recommend that if you are going to school. Okay, and the last option that you have is really an unsecured credit card. So an unsecured credit card is basically known for you don't give a deposit. So it's not like the secured where you have to give a deposit. It's kind of the opposite. You don't have to give a deposit, but there's really no perks to the card. You're not getting cash back. You're not getting anything special about this card. All it does is help you build your credit, and the banks know that. And so that's why you're more likely to get approved. And there's basically a lower barrier to entry to getting approved than some of these other cards. And so the kind of caveat to this specific card is that you do need to have some kind of credit and you might get denied more likely than a secured credit card. Of course, a secured credit card, you're very likely to get approved just because you're giving the money up front. Whereas this one, you're not giving any money up front. You just don't get any of the really benefits of using a credit card. It's almost like a debit card, but with the caveat that you're more likely to get denied than the other one, right? And you don't get any benefits. There's no perks to it. So that's pretty much it. I would say this is kind of like, I wouldn't really enjoy it. Like I wouldn't recommend this specific option. I find that you're better off, especially if you're young, you're most likely going to school, go with a student credit card or go with the secured credit card. So that way you can actually start getting some of the perks of things like that, building your credit, and you're more likely to get approved in the upfront. So highly, highly recommend that. Now I'm showing Capital One here because Capital One is known for having more unsecured credit cards. Let me show you actually, let's go to Capital. These are some of the cards that they have. But if I go to Capital One unsecured credit card, let's see what we got. I think this might just give me yeah, see, so it says no credit score required. They know that you are early on and you might not have a lot of these things. And so this is where you can actually see if you're pre-approved, and it gives you some of the options here. So you're rebuilding. You see there's no annual fee. There's really no perks to it. As you go a little bit further, if you have a better credit score, you're going to get better and better perks. And so this kind of breaks it down for you. You can see like, as you get to excellent, you know, you might get a cash bonus for spending a certain amount of money. And then of course you can get something like this where you get 75,000 points that can be used for travel and other things like that. So we'll actually go into some of this stuff next. Okay, so now that we broke down the different options that you have when you're looking for your first credit card, now how do we actually decide when you have, you know, which credit card to go with, right? Like, how do you know what are the different options and the different things that you can get and what are the things to look out for? So I actually want to show you one of these comparison sites that are really good for helping you make that decision, and it's called Best Money. So they actually have a bunch of options here. You can, look at different loans and things like that, but we're actually focusing on the credit cards today. So we're going to go into credit cards. This is such a good way for you to really look at all the options that you have, especially as you start to build your credit. You can really look at there's so many cards out here. I mean, look at all the options, right? There's so many options. How do you decide which one is best to go with? Well, it really boils down to what you're looking for, what your priorities are, what your credit score is looking like, of course, as you're building your credit, what kind of limit do you have, and what will you be using the card for most, okay? And so you'll notice a lot of these cards, might have an annual fee. This one has no annual fee. This one has no annual fee. But as you scroll down, an Amex, obviously they do have annual fee cards. So you have your gold, which is $325, as you can see here, or you can have the platinum, which is almost $900 a year that you're paying for having this card. So it starts to become more of an expense for you. And that's why you really need to make sure that you're using all of the perks that it comes with. And if you are, then it actually pays itself and it's worth it. But if it isn't, then you might want to opt for a lower card, right? A cheaper card, especially as your first card. You really don't want to, overdo it when it comes to, annual fees. Ideally, you don't want to have any annual fees when you're starting out. You also want to pay attention to your APR. This is how much interest these credit card companies are going to charge you if you, decide to not pay off the card. Now, before I go into that, I just want to make it super clear. You never, ever, 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 under any circumstances, want to be in debt with a credit card company. It is the last thing you want to do. Why? Because the APRs are so high. I mean, look at this, 18 to 27%. Let me actually show you what that looks like. So let's assume that you're in the 20% range. And it's variable. I mean, that's the worst part. It's variable. It's not even a fixed amount. It can go up and down as they see fit. So definitely something to pay attention to. So let's assume, and we'll use the same example. You're spending $500 a month, right? Let's assume that you only pay off $200 a month every single month. So that means that you're accruing about $300 of debt every single month, okay? Times 12, you technically owe $3,600. But it's not that simple. Why? Because you have a 20% APR that most likely is being charged to you every single month. And so what it really looks like is you have, I'm gonna actually change this to 300, and I'm gonna do this. And so you start doing the math here. You're gonna do 1 times 1, well, I'll just do 0.20, right? Basically the 20% that I wrote there. So now you really owe $360 in 1 month, right? You decided that you're only gonna pay 200, now you actually owe 360. And this 360 gets added to this. So now next month, you owe another 300, right? 300, and actually I'll do this. You owe 300 plus the 360 from the prior month, right? We're gonna do the same 20%. We'll do this, right? And I'm actually just gonna keep going down the list here. And let me make sure this is doing it right. So no, this one would be actually, let's see, this 660. So what you actually wanna do is I'm gonna make this just 300. Because every month you're basically not paying off an extra 300. Okay, so now we're gonna bring this here, and bring this here. Okay, so now what actually we'll do, and let me make sure, so this is month 1, 2, 3. Okay, we'll do this plus 1, perfect. Knows what I wanna do. Let's bring it all the way down. Now we're at 12. So, and I'll check my work here to make sure this looks right. Actually, let's do this. Let's remove the decimals. This is, I'm just gonna delete this because we're not doing it. Let's move it here. And again, we're assuming a 20% APR. And this assumes that you are basically paying off. And actually, this is typically shown in a year standpoint. So you can't technically just do it every single month. It doesn't accrue that fast. It depends on the credit card company, of course, and what rates you have. But let's actually make things a little bit simpler, because most likely it would not be this. It would be 20% divided by 12. Let's just do it that way. So then you're paying that much in interest, and we're gonna do 1 plus, and sorry to make it so mathy. So now it looks right. So what we'll do is, and this gets added, perfect. So we got that. I'm gonna bring this down. And I'm so used to using Excel, so using Google Sheets is tough for me. So let's go here. Okay, so I think this looks better now. We're doing about 0.2 every single month. So in the end, right, and if I did my math right, you basically are looking at owing $4,000 at the end of 12 months, right? $4,000, and you actually, that's about 4,000. This is at the last end of the month. And what you actually accrued, right? If we just look at the base, you were not using $300 of it, or you were not paying off 300 bucks. We're looking at $3,600 that you're paying off. Of that $3,600, you're actually owing about $4 grand. If we actually just grab this times 1.20, yeah, it looks like around 4,300. So if you were to just grab the $300 every single month and you just multiply it by 0.20, which is the APR that you're paying for the year, you're looking at about $4,300. But since you're accruing it every single month, then the math might look a little bit different. But on average, this is about how much more you're repaying. Okay, so I actually put it through Claude just to make it super visual for everybody to see. And so this is what I love using AI, and I kind of showed it to you how the math breaks down here. And of course, in this scenario where I just multiplied it by 0.20, this assumes that you're taking a loan all at once. But of course, since you're accruing it over a period of time, that's why it ends up being a little less. But here you can really visualize what this looks like. So I'm assuming that every single month, $300 more gets accrued at a 20% APR, and it's 12 months, right? You're charged $3,600, as we mentioned here, $3,600. But the actual interest accrued is about $350. That means that at the end of the 12 months, you're owing about almost $4,000, which is what we showed here, plus or minus a few bucks, right? So actually it's right on, right? 3,949, right? So this really shows you, but look how the interest starts to accumulate. Let's see what happens when I increase this to 24 months. Let's say it takes you 2 years to pay it off. Look at this. Look at how much more the interest grows. Why? Because as the time goes by and the base gets bigger, you continue to pay interest on the interest, right? This is what compounded interest means. And so over time, you're just paying more and more money. That's what 20%. Now let's assume that we go back here and we take the 27% that they show here. Let's see how much it increases just by going up to 27. Look at that. It goes from, let me go back to 20. It goes from $8,700 to $9,410. So you can really see how this starts to add up just by having a higher APR. That's why it's super important that you never, ever, ever take debt with a credit card company, unless that should be your last option. Why? Because there's so many other ways to get loans or things like that that usually come at a lower rate. And actually, Best Money helps you find things like debt consolidation, where you can actually, let's say that you owe a bunch of different things from different companies. Credit card companies will charge you 30%, 20-something%. You can go to a debt consolidation. They will grab all that debt and they will put it into one place, and then maybe it will charge you 15% or 10%. And there you can actually save a bunch of money. So I went on a whole spill here, but the whole important thing here is that you should pay attention to the APR that these credit card companies are charging you if you find that you're gonna be maybe having to take a little bit of debt as you pay things off. But I highly, highly encourage you to never do this. Pretend that you only have the money that you spend there is going, it's like a debit card. That's the best thing you could do. Pretend it's a debit card. So that way you never get into debt with these credit card companies that charge you way too much, interest, and you start having to pay a lot of money in interest. So you definitely want to pay attention to that. And this is only $300. Imagine if you were doing, $1,000. Look how much interest you're accruing over just 2 years. And that's at 10%. Let's go to 20. Look at that, $5,000 in interest. You go to 28, you're at almost $8,000. I mean, this stuff really adds up. So you want to be super careful when you're doing this. Okay, so if we go back to Best Money, let me just show you some of the things that you want to pay attention to here. So why should you use a comparison site? Well, look at this. It actually lets you choose what it is that you're looking for. Now, for me, I prioritize travel because I find that you can get the best bang for your buck with traveling. I really enjoy traveling. I like seeing the world and seeing all the different cultures and things like that. And just being able to visit, completely different place is just super exciting and a great way to expand your horizons. And so I actually have traveled a lot in my life without spending any money or spending very little money. Why? Because I take advantage of these credit card companies that offer me a bunch of really cool things. So in my case, I'll select travel here, and you'll see how it'll start telling me all the top travel companies and credit cards that I could use to have those benefits. Now, part of it comes with travel is having just perks, benefits like going to the lounge when you're at the airport, getting TSA pre-check, which basically means you can skip kind of the line, or, clear is really the one that you skip the line, but TSA pre, you don't have to take off your shoes. There's certain perks, and the line is shorter than normal TSA. So all those kinds of things are more like perks that you might value a lot, or you might not value it at all. From a dollar perspective, right, one of the perks is that you can go to the lounge and you can eat and drink as much as you want for free. That's huge, especially if you spend a lot of money at the airport when you're there and you're waiting. But that's just a little bit of part of it. I'm gonna tell you actually something that I did personally that I think goes a super long way. Let me show you like the perks, let me show you the best way that you could use these credit cards. So when you sign up, look at this. So if I go here, you can actually check all the pros and cons of this card. High annual fee, no balance transfers. I have this card, I can actually show it to you here. So it's this one right here, which is the American Express Platinum. The Platinum card gives you really good welcome bonuses. This is where you make all of your money. Look at this. You can get as high as 175,000 points, which at the bare minimum is worth 1 cent per point. What that means is it's worth almost $2,000. Yes, you're paying an annual fee of $900, but you're getting a minimum of about $1,750 of value in the first year. That means that you're gonna basically double your money just within the first year. Now, me personally, what I did was there's a flight with Qatar Airways. Qatar Airways has some of the best first class tickets that you could get out there. These tickets go anywhere between $7,000 to $10,000 per ticket just to go in first class in my case, I was going from Miami all the way to Vietnam in Hanoi, right? This is a very expensive flight. So for me and my wife, it would cost about $15,000. Well, what I use is actually I transferred a bunch of my points, and I think in the end, it came out to about 380,000 points, maybe a little bit less because you can get like certain like bonus transfer where like the company will say, hey, you know what, if you transfer to this airline, we'll give you 20% more points, things like that. So I think I spent like, call it 300 something thousand points, which is a lot of points. At 1 cent per point, that'd be worth about $3,000. But guess what? The tickets that I just got were worth $15,000 or $14,000. So I'm getting so much more value than the 1 cent. I'm getting more like 4 or 5 cents per point. This is huge, right? You can really start to live or experience these really cool things that you wouldn't have been able to experience otherwise, other than having this card. So that's kind of like the mecca, I would say. Like as you start to grow and get more credit cards, this is where you want to be. And Best Money really helps you break it down because you can look at like what's important to you. When you're first starting out, I would probably actually prioritize cashback. So you want to get something like 2 to 5% cashback. This one, for example, the Chase Freedom gives you 5% cashback on travel. If you spend a lot of money on travel, you want to get as much cashback as you possibly can on that category. But if maybe you spend most of your money on, I don't know, eating out, that's kind of what I spent the most of my money on, then you're going to want to go with a cashback credit card that gives you cashback on eating out. Like this one, you can actually choose the category of your choice, right? And it kind of breaks down all of the rewards. So you can start to see the biggest value of using a comparison site like this because you can break down all of the key metrics. Welcome offer, which is number 1, annual fee, number 2, how much cashback you're getting, or in this, cashback or points, depending on what you're looking at. If you're looking at a higher tier card like American Express for travel, you're looking at points. If you're looking at cashback, obviously it's a percent of the overall amount that you spend. And then you can kind of see all of it here. Then you even have things like intro APRs where they charge you no money, 0% intro APR for 15 billing cycles. This is really big. If you have a big expense coming up and you need a little bit more time to pay it off, you can go with a card like this and not pay any interest on it for the first 15 months, or first 15 billing cycles. The key thing here is that you better have the money once that cycle ends, because if not, you're gonna be paying 27% APR starting then. So really pay attention to that. Best Money also has things like editor review, where it actually rates the card itself, and you can look at it at a glance. What are some of the pros and cons of it? You even have your pros and cons list here. You have the card features. This is so cool because you can just kind of see everything it offers right up front, and you can start to make the best decision for your case really quickly. And you can actually see some of the editorial reviews directly here with the different companies they work with. Now, one thing that you should know, and Best Money is very transparent about it, is that they do have some kind of affiliation with these companies or partnership. And so it is in their best interest for you to click on, these links, but they're very clear with that. And that's how, you can actually use this to your advantage to just look at what they have to offer, whether it's worth it for you or not. In this case, you get $200 for opening the card. This one gives you 200. A lot of these cards are giving you 200. Look, 200, 200, right? So if you find something that's a little bit higher, like this one, $300, right? You get a $300 welcome offer. But what else does it come with? Well, there's no annual fee, but then after that, you're gonna have to start paying $100 of annual fee. So something to consider. You have your rewards rate, which is how much cashback you're getting. So in this case, for this specific card, let's say that you you go to the supermarket a lot, and that's one of your biggest expenses. Well, look, you get 6% cashback. So this is where you might want to prioritize a card like this, because you know that you spend a lot of money on this specific category. But then, maybe another card, like this one gives you 8%. Let's say that you use a lot of Capital One entertainment purchases. Well, maybe this can be worth it. So it really just depends on what you spend the most amount of money on. All right, with all of that being said, one last caveat I want to give in relation to this, and that is your credit score. When you're applying to these cards, you want to be very selective, and you really want to make sure that you go for a pre-qualification. You saw in some of the things I shared, there were like a pre-qualify right now. This would cause a soft credit check on your report, which is what you need. Like that's what you want, a soft credit report, a soft credit check, because it doesn't impact your credit score. Whereas if you have a hard inquiry, which means like the bank actually goes in, it shows up on your record that you reached out and you wanted a card, and that shows from a credit score perspective that you are looking for more money, and it's not a good sign. And so you want to be careful when you do that. Be very selective with which cards you actually go and apply to, and ideally go with a pre-approval soft check to get an idea, especially as you're starting out. That is super important. And even later on, when you're building your credit, the last thing you need is to go in and then, have your credit score plummet because you applied to a bunch of cards and got hard inquiries. And then as you go on, as the more cards that you apply for, the more it affects your credit score. Now, I will say, look at this. I have a lot of credit cards, a lot, right? And my credit score is really high. And what that means is that you don't necessarily need to have, it doesn't necessarily, like a lot of people think, a lot of credit cards means very low credit score. That's not true. It's really all dependent on a bunch of different factors. The first thing that I'd say is you don't want to apply to a bunch of credit cards at once. You want to stick to one, use it once if you get approved, great. You use that card for a year before you move on to another one, because that helps limit the amount of inquiries that show up on your credit report. But then the good thing is the more credit cards you have, the higher your spending limit is, which means your credit utilization, which means how much of the credit you're using, starts to go down. And that is really good for your credit score. So that's why your credit score can actually be very high when you have a lot of credit cards. So that's something to keep in mind. But of course, I just want to caveat that these credit cards have to be handled as if they are debit cards. You are not spending money you don't have. If you're spending money that you don't have, you're going to start paying a lot of interest, and it can be very dangerous for your financial situation. So please, please, please hear me out when I say treat it like a debit card. If you have $500 in your account, do not go and spend $600. Do not do that. You're better off getting into debt with something else that has a lower rate than going into debt with a credit card company that's charging you 27%. It's never a good decision from a financial perspective. So please pay attention to that. So in conclusion, this is why I highly recommend that you use something like Best Money to compare all the different credit cards that you have that are available to you. And then you go with the one that makes the most sense to your specific needs. You'll do a soft inquiry, something like that, a very soft pre-qualification process. And then that way you can kind of ease your way into something like this. And that's why it's so critical to use a comparison site that breaks it all down for you, like Best Money. And then of course, do the math. And once you start, building your credit cards and you have your credit score, right, and you have a good history, do the math on the cards. After a year, you could always take a look at it and say, hey, was this card worth it? If I'm paying $800, $900 a year on the annual fee, like the American Express Platinum, right? Do I get the perks of it? Am I getting my money back? If the answer is no, then you should cancel the card. It's not worth, or maybe downgrade actually, because canceling the card can cause a credit score impact. So maybe think about, downgrading the card, and worst comes to worst, you could always cancel it. If you find like these high annual fee credit cards, if they're not really giving you any benefit, it's not worth it. I would just personally cancel it and then look for, give it some time. Your credit score will eventually recover. from those kinds of impacts. But yeah, it's super important that you do the math at the end of the year and make sure that it was worth it for your situation and what you actually spend money on. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for hanging out with me on the Personal Finance Diaries. If you found this useful, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button. We're all about making smarter money moves. I'll see you next time.